Hetapu, assalamu alaikum, namaste, Harun Nefer. This is Kasank Ma Keparu with another video for you. And today we're going to talk about a really interesting and exciting topic, which is Kamitic secrets to homeschooling. But before I do that, before I go into that, I want you to hit the like button on the video. And if this is the first time to my channel, welcome. Hit the subscribe button. And also share this video with family and friends because we want to get the revolution started. We want to get this message out there. And lastly, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do so for as little as $1 or $5 a month, and you get access to exclusive videos, tutorials, all that stuff. And another reminder is that we have free ebooks. In the links below, you can click on them and download some free ebooks so you can read a little bit more about the subject matters. Find out what my philosophy or ideology is all about. Find out what the matrix is all about. All right. So let's get into the topic or subject matter at hand. You know, now homeschooling is becoming a very big topic now because we're realizing that the traditional education system is failing our kids, or it's failing the students. But this has been going on for a long time. This is nothing new, okay? But the main concern that I have, I mean, let me just go back and take a step back. When I was in priesthood, our priesthood had a school. So you could send your kids to school, and I believe it went up to about grade 12. So I'm pretty familiar with the idea of, you know, starting your own school or homeschooling. But let me tell you this, here's where the problem comes in. We know that the education system in this country is very flawed, okay? But if you want to take your kids out of school to homeschool them, and what you're going to be doing is exactly the same thing or equivalent to what they will be getting in the public school, then you're doing them a disservice. You're not adding value to what they're learning. Now, many African Americans are not happy with the way things are taught in the system because it blatantly, you know, is a revisionist history, leaving the contribution of African Americans in this country out, and that's one of the impetuses to take their kids out and homeschool them. And I totally understand that, and I totally get that, right? But the problem is that even still, you are teaching them from a Western society perspective, but putting Black faces on the historical figures or adding Black history to the curriculum. But the framework is still there, so the framework is flawed, you know. So let me, oh yeah, you guys, I'm sorry about the white stuff on my face. I was doing a ritual, so I wanted to leave it on here, the powder on here, because I'm not finished the ritual. After I do this video, I'm going to go and finish the ritual actually. So what, you know, this modern system comes out of the Greek culture. And the Greek culture was very left-brained, and it based everything on verbal discourse. So it was about the teacher disseminating information to the students verbally, and the students acting as scribes and writing everything down. And the system back then, as it is now, if you're able to regurgitate the information, then you are awarded accolades. But the ability to regurgitate information, the Kamitic people actually knew about that, and they symbolized that with a baboon, because a baboon, monkey, whatever, they just mimic behavior. And that's all that we're teaching the students to do, is mimic behavior. We're not teaching them how to really think. We're not teaching them how to intuit knowledge. We're not teaching them how to think outside of the box. And worst of all, we have a system that's based on left brain thinking, which compartmentalizes disciplines and shows no relationship between one discipline and the other. And that is so flawed. All right. And I want you to understand that. So I give you kudos if you are homeschooling your kids, but I want you to know that basing what you're doing or teaching what you're doing based on the education system, the Western education system, is still problematic. In fact, our ancient ancestors, the Kamitic people, the way they taught information was totally different than the way we have it now. And let me give you just a basic example of how brilliant they were and how far ahead of us they were. They would, for example, if you went to their school systems, you would learn disciplines that were all merged together. They weren't separated, okay? And they showed relationships. I'll get into that. But more importantly, when you rose to a certain level and mastered a particular field, and time went on, you would pass away. What they would do is they would, of course, we believe in reincarnation. So we would search for you in the newborns, and a newborn would come and we would do a reading, and we would say, oh, this is so-and-so who studied astronomy in his past life. So he is going to continue studying astronomy. And not only will it be easy for him to pick up, but he will not only master the subject, but he will add more information to what we already have. And that's how Kemet, Egypt, was able to grow and reach the zenith of civilization, because they did some radical things that today we couldn't comprehend that. I mean, think about that. I knew that in my past life, as Benjamin Banneker, I was an astronomer. And even now, I have an affinity to astronomy. You know what I mean? So I can pick up and it'll become easier for me. And I can get to a certain level where I can start making revolutionary discoveries. And that's how we did it. And the more important thing I want to get to you is that when we are homeschooling kids, we want to produce geniuses. You just don't want to produce a child that does okay. They get A's or 3.5, what is it, GPA. We want geniuses. And in ancient Kemet, one of the first geniuses was Imhotep. And he was a multi-genius. And I just want to read a little bit about him and his accomplishments so you get an idea. Imhotep was an Egyptian chancellor to the pharaoh Dozier, probable architect of the Dozier step pyramid and high priest of the sun god Ra at Heliopolis. Very little is known of Imhotep as an historical figure, but in the 3,000 years following his death, he was gradually glorified and deified, became a deity. Imhotep was an ancient Egyptian genius who achieved great success in a wide variety of fields. Inventor of the pyramid, author of ancient wisdom, architect, high priest, physician, astronomer, and writer, Imhotep's many talents and vast acquired knowledge has such an effect on the Egyptian people that he became one of only a handful of individuals of non-royal birth to be deified or promoted to the status of God. Now, think about that. You see how, and I'm going to tell you that was probably a norm, that he was immersed in all of these different disciplines, and he excelled at each one. Why? Why? Because predominantly the way a Western society is set up is left brain. The ancient Kemetic people and most ancient people, including the Chinese, and we thought whole brain thinking, which allowed us to excel and build these great civilizations, to build these wonders of the world. But something happened to the planet where the space-time continuum was interrupted. And we went from the moon cult. The moon cult symbolizes the right brain, and it's the female principle, to the sun cult, which is the left brain and the male aspect. So we are now focused on left brain thinking, okay? And just to set a baseline, white people are predominantly left brain, Black people are predominantly right brain, men are predominantly left brain, and women are predominantly right brain. All right. And so it varies in degrees. And I want you to also understand that when I say things like left brain, right brain, predominantly left brain, you do use both sides of your brain. You have to, you do. But you favor one over the other, especially in societies. So we know that Western society favors, well, actually the planet favors left brain thinking. And that was intentionally done. And what it intentionally was done to retard our progress, to keep us in the dark ages. Okay. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So I want to greet the Magi's, Aset Ma'at Hetepu, El Glass Hetepu, the house of Lemura, Namaste. Suan, Namaste. Divinely Me, Carolyn Marie, Namaste. So now, as I set that baseline, you now understand that the institutions of higher learning not only award you based on rote memory or regurgitation of information, but they keep you trapped in left brain thinking. And we will see how flawed that is and how it retards your progress, how it traps you into conformity to where you're really not thinking. You're not thinking at all, and most of what you've been told and your thoughts are not your own. You're just you're parroting information. But and some people who can parrot information and express a lot of emotion behind it, they become great orators, and we think they're brilliant, but they're not really brilliant, because anybody can do that. But there are very few people in the world who come along who are Imhotep or a Nikola Tesla. And he was a very famous inventor that not many people know about and is not taught in school. And there's a reason for that, a specific reason for that. Now, I'm going to go over some things, and these are best practices for homeschooling. You don't have to take them. It's up to you. But I just want to present this so you get a broader perspective on what you should be doing or what's out there. And I'm going to recommend some books to follow up on that will help you with this understanding of putting together your curriculum for homeschool based on whole brain thinking. Now, one of the things that we do, and this, of course, is all going to get into the esoteric, so follow me, stay with me, is that when we start the process of homeschooling, we find out what clan the individual is in. Why is that important? Because we all belong to a certain clan, whether it's Ma'at clan, Sebek clan, Harukahuti clan, a Set clan, because your clan is basically deals with your natal traits. A Ma'at person, for example, has a kind of cold, moist energy. In other words, that type of energy is good for a specific field. A Harukahuti person who's in a Harukahuti clan has a very hot energy. And so, in other words, they learn best through engagement, through activity. I'll get into that a little later. We also would find what their zodiac sign is. Okay, so whether you're a Pisces, so I'm a Pisces. So what does that mean? That means that I learn best when things have an emotional attachment to it. Okay, and I'll get into that a little later. Now, the most powerful way of teaching. I'm glad I got that book. Okay, I want to make sure I had that book. The most powerful way of teaching is through trance induction. And here's a book that you should get. And I've always recommended this book. You've probably seen it before, which is Super Learning. And this book is based on the Russians' experiment into trance and induction or hypnosis. And when you place a person under hypnosis and you feed them information, whatever you tell them, it is taking as truth in trance. Not only that, but they remember the information. And taking this step further, they just don't remember the information. but the right brain is a congregative thought process. So the information that you feed them, they, on a subconscious level, they are making connections between things, and they're not even aware that they're doing that. All right, so let's talk about the ways that you can teach using the Kamitic trance induction. The first way is you put students in a trance state. All right, everything we do in life involves trance state. When you're happy and elated, you're in a trance state. When you're angry, you're in a trance state. And those states are learned states, meaning that you learned how to be angry and you learned how to be elated. And when you are repeating a behavior, we call that a pattern. And that pattern then becomes the trance state. The trance state that you will put the students in is one at a certain frequency where they are open and receptive. They're in the offset state, because offset is receptivity. So they're open subconsciously for information. And I can't go into the details of how that's done. We'll save that maybe for a future video. So that's one way where the teacher will instruct or disseminate information to the students while they're in a trance state. And this is exactly what the Russians did in superlearning. Okay, that's exactly what they did. Now, the next way of teaching is to take the students individually and put them into a trance state. And again, this is what the Russians were pioneering. So what do you do? Okay, so it's the same thing as hypnotherapy or hypnosis. The word hypnosis, trance, it's all the same. Students, a teacher would put the student in trance, right? Remember what I said is when you're in trance or that hypnotic state, anything you say is taken as truth, is taken as gospel, okay? So for example, and this has actually been done in experiments, this is water. But if you tell me in trance state that it's vodka, I will believe it's vodka, and my body chemistry, my biology, and the cells in my body will act as if it's vodka. That's how powerful trance state is. So the teacher puts the student into a trance state. And there's two things you can do, okay? Taking a cue from the Russians again. The first thing you do is you tell the students that they are brilliant, that they learn quickly, that they excel in their subjects. And this is taken and internalized in the trance state, and the students will act as if they are brilliant. They will act as if they learn quickly. And when the students come out, you will see a dramatic improvement in terms of how they learn, how they retain information, how they feed back information. Okay, it's miraculous. The next thing that you do is going into the possession, which we in African culture call possession, but in the super learning that the Russians were doing, they call it modeling. Okay, so you would take a character, you would take an historical figure like a Leonardo da Vinci or even a Nikola Tesla, and that you would, in a trance state, tell the student, "You're Nikola Tesla, you're Leonardo da Vinci." So what they found through these experiments in doing this was that the students would come out and start creating things, inventing things, and and they would make these breakthroughs, you know, off the process of modeling or possession. Now in Africa, we would say you would create the ideal person who is super intelligent or whatever, and you would step into that body. You would step in, or it would come into you, and you would possess the spirit of that intelligent individual. So you're feeding all that in the trance state. And when the students come out, you will see a radical difference in how they perform in their grades, okay? So that's one way. Now, let's talk about this. We know that there's the energetic field, and the energetic field is where information is exchanged, you know, and that is the Akashic records. So our thoughts are traveling, and we're picking up on our thoughts. And going back to the 100 monkey principle, if you're not familiar with that, you should Google that. But the 100 monkey principle is the idea that when a group reaches a certain tipping point, that information of what their knowledge is transfers to other people, even though other people can be a far distance away. So what does this mean in terms of learning? Well, this means that if hypothetically you have a big family or whatnot, you can take your students who are brilliant and good and maybe take another student who's not up to par and put them in that mix. And just being around an energy, that one student will start to excel because information is transferred. And also that student will start to pick up on things that he never knew or never read about just from being in that type of environment. See, the way the Western education system is now, it's backwards. So this is what they'll do. If a student is slow, or what they call is slow, they'll put them in a slow class with other slow learners. So what does that do? That keeps him at that same baseline, or maybe even goes down a bit depending upon the rest of the students. So it has a very detrimental effect on that student. What they should do is take that, and this is what they actually did to me, because they identified me as a slow learner, and they found out that he's not a slow learner. He's a out of the box thinker. So what they did with me was they had originally put me in a slow learning class, and my mom protested. So they took me out of that and they put me into a higher learning class. And by being in that higher learning class, my grades dramatically improved because energy is exchanged. Energy is transferred. We're picking up on energies. So I want you to think about that in terms of how you teach. Now, the other way that we can do it, this is Francis Barton's book, The Practice of Magical Evocation. There are energies and spirits out there that govern your life. We call these Genii, geniuses. And these spirits can be tapped into, and you can petition them to help you in certain fields. If you want to master mathematics, you can get in contact with a Genii who will help you excel in math. And if you look here, you have the sigils for the different Genii. If you wanted to excel in astronomy, there's a Genii for astronomy. Okay. And the book details the ritual, how to get in contact with the Genii. But once you contact the Genii and you do the offering, and the genie grants your wish, the Genii agrees to assist you, you're going to receive so much intuitive knowledge, so much wisdom. You're going to be like revolutionizing things. You know what I mean? And that's when you see, like, for example, Imhotep, Nikola Tesla, any of these individuals that come along and they're trailblazers, what they are is that they're in contact with a specific Genii who is giving them information. All right. So keep that in mind. Now let's move on. Okay. And one of the books you should get is Michael Gladwell's Outliers, sorry, because he actually documents in this book. For example, we all think the Chinese is good in mathematics. Chinese aren't really good in math. It's just that their language is structured in such a way that it allows them to repeat numbers very quickly, while our language and our number system is cumbersome. So he gets into a lot of that in this book, but the whole premise of the book is studying individuals who excel in their fields and understanding why they excel. And what you'll see is a lot of it has to do with their background, their upbringing, their family, their income, you know, and things like that, because we know that poverty has a direct effect on how individuals learn and how they acquire knowledge. All right. So let's get down to business, okay? Now, one of the first things that you should do, and this was, I went to a lecture, and I forgot the gentleman's name, but he's a pioneer in this field because he came out with a paper and a book talking about how there was various different intelligences. And he called these intelligences tactile, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual, right? But we know as Kamitian people, there's only one intelligence, the indwelling intelligence, which is Osir, all right? And we strive to resurrect Osir. So the thing that you should do, and they also have, well, let me just say this. You need to test your kids or the students on how best they learn. Now, there's a Myers-Briggs type indicator. Myers-Briggs type indicator. You can look that up. And that's a test that'll tell you what type of learner you are and what type of person you are. It's very involved. I took that and it was interesting and it was great. It helped me. But I'm going to simplify that here by just talking about these 4 basic ways of learning: tactile, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. Tactile is where you need to be touching and involved in something. That's how an individual, if a person is tactile, that's how they learn. They need to actively be involved and being, touching, feeling, physically involved. Auditory is more of a Sebek person. They need to hear the information given to them verbally. Kinesthetic, well, kinesthetic is active. They need to be physically active. And this is where you do role playing and things like that with the kids. Now, visual, of course, is you need photographs, movies, visual learning, okay? And sometimes students are a mixture. Some can be tactile and kinesthetic, I'm a predominantly tactile person, So now, with that in mind, there are tests online. If you want to test, I can send you one where you can test your child and find out which one they're strongest at. All right. And there's also tests to find out if they're predominantly left brain or right brain. That's very important that you do that. Okay. Now, here's one of the most important tests that you need to give. And have you ever gone to a hospital and you got a blood test? And the blood test comes back and it covers like all of this glucose level, all these things down. Well, that's what the education system should be doing. They should be testing you on your cognitive faculties, but they don't. They just throw you in and feed you information. There are main predominantly, let me just put it this way. There are specific ways in which we think and we learn. And when any one of those areas is not functioning to its highest degree, then we tend to look at people as slow learners or they just don't have it. But if they're lacking in those one areas and you know what area, it can be improved through various different ways. So let's talk about that, okay? When we do this testing, you have to find out, okay, first thing is the segregated faculty. How is that operating? So what does that mean? Segregated faculty is how they separate things, how they sequentially put things. The next one is congregative faculty. Well, what is the congregative faculty? It's how they bring things together. They relate things. The next one is their analytical ability. We all know that. And another one is a synthesizing ability. Are they good at taking two things, bringing them together and synthesizing these? Another thing that you test for is how is their abstract faculty? Or can they think abstractly? And then another one is their concrete thinking. Do they have the ability to think concretely? And then going in further, we'll look at, are they good at induction and deduction? Okay. Now, each one of these areas needs to be tested to find out how well they're doing. If there's a weak spot, let's say, and I'll point this out, for example, in Western culture, they have a difficulty in abstract thinking. That is a widespread problem in Western culture, abstract thinking. So we know that's a weak spot. So that is one area that we'll need to focus in and work on with the student. Okay. We have to increase their ability to think abstractly. And I've given this example before. Your ability to abstractly says, I'm not the physical body. I am consciousness. The physical body is merely a vehicle. Your ability to think concretely says, oh, I'm a physical body. That's a concrete thought. Okay. Now, when you get the results of those tests and you find out he's tactile, auditory, kinesthetic, or visual, and if there's any lacking area in segregative, congregative, analytical, synthesizing, abstract, concrete, induction, and deduction thinking, once you find out those weak spots, then you can apply treatment. You can apply different means and measures to increase the intelligence level. of that individual. All right. Now, what is one way that we can do that is through binaural beats and isochronic tones. And I have found personally that these work wonders. When listening to these binaural beats, I have seen my cognitive faculty increase. I mean, a dramatic change, not like a little small change, you know? So this is something where we should work on. And in fact, it's one of the pet peeves that I have, you know? Gerard Hatepu, Mike, namaste, Karneta Hatepu. Glad to see you here. Diana Hatepu. And Divinely Me. Hey, there you go. All right. We got the Magi's in the chat room. That's great. All right. Sorry, I'll take a sip of this vodka. I'm in trance right now, so it tastes like vodka to me. The isochronic tones are great too, and you can find them online, and they will specifically tell you what they're used for. You have binaural beats that help you to use both left and right brain. You have binaural beats that just increase the overall cognitive faculty. You have binaural beats that help you with mathematics, help you with long-term memory, help you with short-term memory. So use those. They work wonders. I don't know why people have not discovered this. Now, going back to what I was saying before, my pet peeve is that here you have these nincompoops who are these musicians, these rap artists, right? Let me tell you something, my beloved. These guys come along, they want to get into the rap game, and they produce these tracks and these beats. If they would just put on the track on a subliminal level binaural beats that, say, for example, improve the intelligence of the people listening to their rap track, it will make a radical change in the world, a radical change. We know that subliminal messages are put in music. For example, if you walk into the department store and you hear like what they call the elevator music, there's subliminal messages there telling you to buy things. Yes, it is. If you go to Las Vegas and you go to the casino, there's subliminal messages there telling you to play the slots machines and things like that. So why haven't the rap game, these guys who claim to be musicians or claim to be artists, haven't discovered to put these isochronic tones and binaural beats in their music to help uplift society, to change the world? Can you fathom that? I mean, it would literally change everything overnight if they did that, especially if the track was a hit. But that's a subject for another day, because we're living in a sahu, what my our ancestors called it the animal spirit. We're living in a sahu world, and it's corrupt. The world is corrupt, you know. And this higher knowledge of using these binaural beats could even heal you, because there's binaural beats to heal you from certain ailments. All right, let's move on. Now, what the institutions of so-called higher learning have failed miserably at is the understanding of physiology and biology. That if a student is a slow learner or is not picking up or not excelling in school, it could be from a deficiency, a vitamin deficiency or supplement deficiency. And that can be easily remedied. Now, one of the things that I take that has really improved my ability to focus, to have clarity, and improve my memory was Neural Ignite. Let's see if you can see that. And you can get this on Amazon. It's about 30 bucks. All right. Another one is Adderplex. This is really good too. I take a combination of this. Now, this field that I'm talking about now is already out there. It's called Neurotropic. And the individuals who are doing this are mainly in Silicon Valley. And because I'm in tech, I know all about this stuff. They usually go by the term biohackers, because they're trying to increase their intelligence level. Because in Silicon Valley, you have these developers and programmers who have to work very long hours, and they need their cognitive faculties to be sharp and to think. I mean, when you're putting in 15 hours a day, 16 hours a day, you need something to give you that boost. So those in Silicon Valley have been experimenting with neurotropics. Another one is Cognera, and here you go. You can read, see if you can read that. Yeah. Okay. So this is a really good one too. So I prescribe that. A lot of times students are very nervous and they have trouble sitting and paying attention. A little bit of GABA. This is 750 milligrams. I think it's too much. You probably want to just start it with 500 milligrams, and that'll calm you down and help you to focus. It tames the monkey mind because you're having too many thoughts. You take the GABA. And next is, this is kind of common. You can get this anywhere. Super B, energy complex, because a lot of students suffer from anxiety, and this can help. One of the other two best things I found that works is peppermint. Peppermint is good at helping to not only helping with your auditory skills, speech, but also your clarity of mind and thinking. Another thing is dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is really good for being more on the ball and quick thinking. This is what I'm trying to say. Thinking on your feet, and it's really good with that. So so those I recommend highly, but you'll have to try it because everybody's biology and chemistry is different. So what works for me may not work for you. So a lot of times it's about experimentation. And those who are involved in neurotropics, they usually take a lot of these on a daily basis, and they do the mixture. And I was doing this very heavily for a while, just experimenting. And I got myself in some trouble ODing on certain things. Okay. The next thing you want to do is that will increase the intelligence level of the students is mantras or hakaus. There are mantras for improving memory, mantras for excelling in math, and things of that nature. So there's this book, Healing Mantras. Okay. And it has some good mantras in there. You want to kind of check that out. And these are mantras that the kids can recite, verbally or in their mind. And you'll see a stark difference in their behavior and their ability to learn. One of the things that you want to get to is this book. I found it very useful. It's called The Einstein Factor. And this has a lot of good tips on really just super learning, accelerating the learning process. So, I've had this book over the years and always refer to it. You can see I've highlighted certain things in the book, So I use this book heavily. And another book I think is really, you should get, this is probably hard to get, but I would get this one. This is called Not Out of Greece. And this book really talks about the education, how the Greeks thought, and how their thinking patterns were flawed, and how African people as whole brain thinkers were the ones to really create the sciences and everything, mathematics, And lastly, this one deals with the ecosystem, because you have an ecosystem within you. And that ecosystem is striving for balance. And when your chakras aren't balanced, then you have a learning disability. And you've got to learn that all of these things have to be balanced properly. And this is the Tree of Life meditation system. And this is based on all of the deities. And this could really help you to understand where you have a weakness at as a student, or even as a teacher. You know what I mean? So be aware of that. And okay, now let me just get into this one thing lastly. Did I talk about the flow? Yeah, this is a good book, The Flow. This talks about that there is an optimum state where you get into, where you're just with it, man. Everything flows, everything goes great. Athletes have been in that flow state. Students have been in that flow states. Lovers like me, Mac Daddies, have been in that flow state. And this is a state of the Japanese call a type of Zen state, but it is a state where when you get into it, everything works. All right. So the book actually talks about that. All right. So getting my magic wand out here, you know, very powerful. Now, lastly, Diana, dark chocolate. All right. It's an aphrodisiac. Anyway, the last thing I want to say about this is that you must understand one thing. The inability to think whole brain has us looking at the world in a very skewed manner. We don't see abstract connections. And abstract connections are necessary for revolutionary discoveries, for advancing science. And that's how Nikola Tesla and Imhotep and Einstein and Galileo all excelled at what they did, because they were able to not only think abstractly, but using the whole brain to make connections, to make abstract connections. Do you understand what I mean? The mere fact that we have these separated disciplines that have no connection to each other shows not only that we're thinking concretely, but we are eliminating how we see associations and interdependence and interrelationship between things. And it is this very way of looking at things that sets the stage for things like sexism, racism. Because when you compartmentalize things and you think from the segregated faculty, what you're doing is you're not allowing yourself to see the connections and how things are interdependent upon one another. This is what has got us into wars. This is what has created religious dogma and religious jihads. The inability to see how we can synthesize, how we can think congregatively to bring things together, see the relationship, and to have them work harmoniously in the ecosystem. And the ecosystem tells us a place for everything and everything in its place. And there's interdependence and interrelationship between all things. And if one thing is missing or not fulfilling its purpose, the machine, the entire machine cannot function correctly. That's what the modern education system is doing, is it's flawed thinking by separating things and showing you no relationship between them. And we wonder why we have a political system that cannot reconcile itself between parties. We wonder why we have this thing called racism. We wonder why we have sexism. We wonder why we have partisan politics. All these things come out of a framework of left brain segregative thinking. So what I'm saying to you is that if you are going to homeschool your children, do not do so with the left brain segregative thinking. Indoctrinate them into whole brain thinking and go through the steps that I've outlined here to test them and to work on those certain cognitive faculties that they may be lacking. And using trance induction, which is a very powerful tool to have them retain information quicker, to have them learn quicker and make connections, and to model or pattern themselves after certain brilliant men or women in history. And they can take on those attributes and excel in their particular field. So I've hoped that this information has been beneficial. I could have gone into a lot more, but I didn't want to inundate you with too much stuff. So let me see. We have any questions in the chat room? No questions. You guys are good. That's great. Well, I want to thank everyone, and also keep in mind that I have the Reality Manifestation program that's still open enrollment. So if you want to sign up for that, please do so with the link below. And this is Kasak Ma Keperu, son of Ma'at and Tahuti. My aunt is the beautiful Heteru. Until my next broadcast, Amin Ra.